Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to sew this adorable baby sleep sack with snaps at the shoulders. And some of you may have come here looking for a sleep sack with a zipper, but I'm going to explain why I prefer the snaps at the shoulders. And then if you still want a sleep sack with a zipper, let me know in the comments and I'll make a video for that later. So the reason I prefer the snaps is because they are fairly stiff. You get good quality ones. And it takes much longer for your little ones to learn how to open them. When my daughter was a toddler, she liked to stuff her sippy cup and her stuffed animals inside her sleep sack, and then she wanted to get them out, so she learned how to open it. The problem was when she would open it and take it off, then she would wake up in the middle of the night crying because she was cold. Hence the reason I recommend snaps. You can also use hook and loop tape, but it has the same problem of being very easy to take off. So I'm going to show you all the steps to sew this sleep sack. And if you'd like to get the pattern for this, it's called the Orion Sleep Sack by Goober P Designs. And you can get this pattern free with the code YTOrionFree. Before you start sewing, you're going to need to pick some fabric to use for this sleep sack. It is a double layered sleep sack, so it has a fabric on the inside and a fabric on the outside. For this one, I used a French terry and a waffle knit. These are both stretchy knit fabrics, and so for that reason, I needed to reinforce the top edges so that the snaps didn't rip out. And I'll show you how to do that later if you want to use stretchy fabrics as well, but there are lots of non-stretchy fabrics that you could use for this sleep sack. I do recommend using natural fibers for babies, such as bamboo and cotton, because babies haven't learned how to regulate their body temperature yet. So using natural fibers is helpful to ensure that they don't overheat. It can be hard to find a nice, thick, warm fabric in a natural fiber. So if your house is really cold, then you could use a polyester fleece, for example, on the outside, but I would still recommend using a natural fiber next to your baby. But to be on the safe side, you could use an alpine fleece, for example, out of natural fibers. For other safety reasons, you also want to ensure that you choose the right size for this sleep sack. The pattern size chart is not done by age, and I've done that intentionally to make sure that you measure the child's chest size and make sure that you are making the right size for them. Because if the sleep sack is too big, then they can slip down inside a bit and get it over their face, which is not safe. If you're making it for a child and their chest size is different from their length size, then there are some instructions in the pattern for how you can shorten or lengthen the sleep sack so that you can make it at the right size for their chest, but still have the right length for them. Okay, let's get started. So you should have 4 pieces for your sleep sack, 2 out of your main fabric and 2 out of your lining fabric. You want to place your 2 main fabric pieces right sides together. And you're going to sew around the sides and the bottom. Next, you're going to repeat this with the lining, but you need to leave a 3-inch gap somewhere along the side. After that's sewn, you can turn the lining right side out and insert it inside the main fabric sack so that they are right sides together. The right side of your lining sack should be facing the right side of your main fabric sack. Match up those top edges with the curves and the tabs and pin and clip it together. Then you're going to sew all the way around those top edges, around the tabs, stopping at the corners and turning, and around all the curves. So here's what I mentioned before about reinforcing those tabs. Before you sew all of those top edges, if you're using stretchy or thin fabrics for both of your layers, then you're going to want to reinforce those tabs. There is a small pattern piece to cut interfacing or a small piece of woven fabric into these little reinforcement pieces that you would then clip together with the tabs before you sew. It doesn't matter what side you put it on or whether this little scrap of fabric is right side or wrong side against the fabric, doesn't matter because it will be on the inside after you're done. Okay, now that all those top edges are sewn, you'll need to clip the corners diagonally, making sure that you don't cut through your stitches. Then you're going to make a series of vertical cuts just up to the stitching line around all of the curves so that when you turn this right side out, those curves will lay properly and not get all bunchy. Now you're going to turn the sack right side out through the gap that you left in the side of the lining. Take a chopstick or the end of a paintbrush or something like that with a blunt edge, insert it inside between the layers and use it to poke out the corners. To close the gap, pull it straight and fold the edges in. And you can either hand stitch this shut or just sew right through all of the edges as close to the edge as you can. Here's what it looks like when you've sewn right through the edges. It looks fine, but it's not invisible. So if you'd like it to be invisible, then you can hand stitch it using a ladder stitch. And I'll link a tutorial for the ladder stitch down in the description of this video. And just a note that if you do hand stitch this shut, then the sleep sack is actually reversible. Now it's time to put your closures on the shoulder tabs. And you're going to start with the front of the sleep sack. And if you're using hook and loop tape, then you want to put a square of loop tape on the front, on the main fabric of your front tabs, and sew it in place. Using snaps, you're going to mark your snap placement approximately 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch from the corner on each side. I usually just eyeball it, but you can use a ruler and measure it out. Use an awl to poke a hole through both layers of fabric. Then you're going to take your cap of your snap and you're going to put it through the hole from the lining side and then cover it with the socket, which is the female piece of the snap. Press those together. And you're going to repeat this on both corners of both of the front tabs. Then for the back, if you're using hook and loop tape, then you would put your square of hook tape on the lining side of the fabric. Using snaps, we're going to put our snap stud side on the lining fabric. So again, poke a hole. And then you're going to poke the cap through from the main side this time. Place the stud piece or the male end of the snap on top and then press it together. And that's it, you're done. If you'd like more information about the type of snaps that I use, I've left some information down in the description of this video. I do use a size 20 cam snap, and you can read more about those snaps at the links in the description of this video, including some tips on how to make sure that you get a good press so they don't come apart. This is the super basic version of this sleep sack. And you do want to note that the fabrics are not joined together at the bottom. So it does come out like that, but it stays in quite nicely. But if you want to sew it in a way so that those fabrics are attached at the bottom and the lining can't come out like that, I do have another sewing method in the Stellar Sleep Sack pattern, which is basically this basic pattern but with a ton of more options. It includes that different sewing method that I mentioned, and it also includes romper versions, so you can put feet on the sleep sack or you can put cuffs on the sleep sack, which is great when they get a little older but still want that cozy wearable blanket feel. It also has some fun color blocking options, so you can use up scraps of different fabrics and make some really cool designs. I've linked both the free Orion sleep sack in the description as well as the full pattern with all the options, which is the Stellar sleep sack. Thanks for watching, and please leave me a note in the comments if you'd like to see more tutorials for these kinds of projects.